if the one thing that was meant to break you had the power to help someone else to survive? Welcome to Healing Through Chaos, the podcast where pain is transformed into purpose through powerful storytelling. It's the one place that you'll find licensed professionals and survivors meet at the same table to talk lived experience and expertise. I'm your host, Jonte, and this is where your healing journey begins. On today's episode, we talk with one of the unsung heroes of the mental health field, peer support specialist, and owner of Life Rewired, Miss Sherri Grieve. Welcome, Miss Grieve.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So, when you look back, what were some of the earliest patterns of behavior you now recognize weren't truly yours?
Looking back, I would definitely say that I was a people pleaser and I used humor as my armor. As long as I was being goofy and funny, making people laugh, they weren't seeing any of the hidden things that I was trying to hide from. And I was always trying to keep everyone else happy as I felt responsible for all of their emotions. I also stayed busy all the time because if I was busy, I didn't have to think, I didn't have to feel, and I didn't have to face anything that life was actually handing me. It was a really good way to hide from what was going on inside my head during my childhood and into my adulthood. And looking back now through my healing journey, I've realized that a lot of those patterns were survival patterns and they weren't actually who I was.
I have a history with people pleasing as well, and I used to cope was smoking, and it helped me get to the next level in a lot of places. And sure enough, I ended up feeling empty on the inside and feeling like I was in survival mode, and my nervous system completely just breaking down. So I as well identify with that people pleasing aspect and going through my own healing journey. I now look back at that and realize that's why I was smoking as much as I was. So thank you for sharing with our audience your personal story and how we got here today. Now, on the outside, you said you seemed like you had it all together, which we always do that. What did that version of you look like day to day?
Day to day, people would have said I was fun loving, carefree, stress free. They would say that I was a hard worker. I dove into everything that I did with every ounce of my body. Everything became a passion of mine, and I took a lot of pride in everything I did. So I would work Monday to Friday. I was a single parent. After work, I was coaching my son's events, whether it be hockey, judo, soccer, doing events at school. And then I also became a volunteer for different organizations, ran a bunch of the main fundraisers for them, showed up for everyone else, didn't even know that the word no actually was a word that was a sentence in a whole. And by doing that, it kept me busy. And everyone would say, hey, Sherry's that person that we can lean on. If we have troubles, if we need help with anything, if we just need an ear, go to Sherry. She has everything together. Most people would not have realized that internally I was dying.
And I identify with that because I'm a hard worker as well, but you're slowly dying on the inside because it feels like you have to keep powering through. What was going on during that time that people couldn't see?
Oh, the overthinking. I was in my head constantly. I overanalyzed everything. I second guessed everything. Even a text message didn't matter if it was from my best friend, who it was from. I was rereading it, trying to make sure that I understood everything inside of it, looking for all the hidden innuendos that may or may not even be there, judging everything I did as a parent. I was a single parent for most of my son's life, and I left his father when he was a year old. And over time, I wound up developing anxiety as well. And once the anxiety hit, then it was the panic attacks. And then it was like, well, am I feeling this? Am I overwhelmed? Is it my work? Is it my son? Is it just me overthinking? And eventually that led me to disconnect from myself and disconnect from my own emotions. My nervous system, which I didn't realize, became in fight or flight. So when I lived in fight or flight, my nervous system didn't know how to calm down anymore. So then it became looking for, well, now what do I got to do? I can't sit still. If I sit still, then I'm being useless. Well, I could be doing something better. So internally, it was a battle within myself and literally felt like I was dying. It literally felt that it would never shut off, that there was, I honestly thought most days that that's how I was supposed to be living, that that became normal to me.
That overthinking, it really can cause you to overanalyze situations where you really already have the confidence in, but you want to make everything so perfect and you're afraid of mistakes. Now, can you walk us through those cycles that you were battling, such as pleasing and reacting? And what did they feel like on a day to day basis for you?
Oh, overthinking led to destructive behaviors. It led to more people pleasing. And then it became overreacting in my parenting, overreacting at work. And it was a constant battle beyond replaying those conversations in my head or rereading messages. It became that constant worry. Now I'm worrying about what I'm doing for other people. Is what I'm doing affecting them? Well, I should change who I am because I don't want them to feel that I've done something to upset them, or I don't want them not to accept me. And then I started analyzing and then psychoanalyzing how they would react to me or anything like that. And it led to me often ignoring my own personal needs. And I started feeling like if I had personal needs, that meant I was selfish. And that kind of went back into my childhood and the people pleasing. And if you were doing for yourself, that was because you were selfish and you should have been doing for other people. And so eventually it led to emotional overwhelm. And I started reacting from fear or exhaustion instead of clarity. And as I disconnected from myself and my own emotions, it led to, like I said, those destructive behaviors, whether that led to more drinking or I started going against my own morals and values with being more sexually open than I should have been, or as people say, should isn't a great word. I started having sex outside of marriage or my relationships. And that was completely against all my morals and values. But I was doing it because I assumed, well, that's what you do because you need to people please. And it just became a vicious cycle. And then afterward, I was feeling guilty or I was ashamed. But then the cycle repeated because as soon as you felt the guilt or shame, then you needed to fill that void again. So it was just that vicious cycle that eventually you're like, is the roller coaster actually going to end ever?
And I identify with that as well, especially on the sexual aspect, because I did at one point in my life, I thought that was the only way I was going to be accepted by people because it was popular. Everybody was sleeping around, but it went against my own personal morals. But when you're people pleasing, you want to fit in, you want people to like you don't want to be that outcasted person. So you make horrible decisions in those moments that even go against your own morals. So I totally identify with that as well, Sherry. I went through it myself. So thank you again for being so open with our audience about your personal journey because I think a lot of people out there battle those same things and are still afraid to come out and say, "Hey, I've been through that. I'm currently going through that." And this is how we all heal, honestly, y'all, by sharing our own personal stories with everyone. Now, at what point did you begin to question, maybe this isn't who I am?
That probably would have been when my son was about 14 or 15. Like, I think deep inside me, I always knew that I started to change and I wasn't liking who I was becoming. And I was like, I don't think this is me, but it was constantly repeating. So then I started thinking, well, maybe it is me. But then there was an incident when my son was, I think, 14 or 15, and we had gotten in a serious fight that night. And it was not the first time I had left the house and lost my shit, so to speak. And but that night, for whatever reason, was different. He had even messaged one of his best friend's fathers and said, like, I really messed up. My mom left and I don't know if she's ever coming back. And I came home and I thought to myself, oh my goodness, like what happened? And so we sat, we talked, we figured out, like, oh, we both need to figure this out. My son has his own battles that he suffers from. And so it wasn't always easy being a single parent. But I realized I also was causing a lot of the behavioral issues because I wasn't showing up the way he needed me to show up, and I wasn't showing up for myself. So if I'm not showing up for myself, how can I show up for anybody else? And I sadly was giving my kid the blueprint that I had been given. And it was like, I don't know if the universe screamed at me, if it was God screaming at me, like, hey, you're now at a place in your life where you're doing well. You have tools. You know there's the option. Counseling is a thing. I grew up, you never said sorry. You never owned your mistakes. I had a mother that believed she was perfect. If we were beaten, if we were mistreated or didn't have food, it was because we deserved that. So growing up like that, you don't realize how much of you that you carry with you until you have that time in life where you hit a wall and you start to see that your childhood patterns are what you're putting onto your own children and you start to see how it affects them. And so at that point, I went to bed that night with tremendous guilt, like probably guilt and disappointment within myself. And at that point, I had never experienced disappointment in myself, but I knew at that moment, I was like, okay, Sherri, you're going to wake up, you're going to have the tools, you're going to be a better human starting tomorrow morning. And I did. I reached out to a counselor at that next morning. I woke up, there was a counselor recommended to me, reached out to him, and that's where I started my journey. And it was also being honest with yourself. Because if you're not honest with yourself and you're not ready to do the work and face the demons that are living in you, there's really no point to try and heal then. And like no healing journey is linear. And if you're not honest with yourself, you're not going to be able to be better or heal those things. And as soon as I started on that journey, I was like, oh, this is who I'm supposed to start becoming. This feels different. And it slowly started changing in my parenting. And it wasn't easy. My son was a teenager. He was already that angst and, oh, my mom's done this and my mom's done that. And I can't forgive her. So there was a period in there where I had to struggle with knowing my son may or may not ever forgive me. Now is the time because it's never too late to change who you are and be true to yourself.
As mothers, our babies, they are our world, and we carry those traumas from our own childhood because sometimes we think that those are the tools that help us become who we've become. And when you get into those arguments or into those moments with your kids, it helps you reflect and go, hey, something is wrong here. I remember myself, I always talk about my suicide attempt and not thinking I was enough for my own child. But after getting through that moment, I immediately said, no, I got to change because she deserves a healthy mother. She does deserve a mentally stable mother. And I just remember going to work that Monday and literally crying in front of my boss and telling her what had happened. And sure enough, she helped me find a good therapist and I got myself into therapy and I started doing the work. So, Sherri, I totally identify with that moment of you going through a moment with your kid and you're not feeling like you're worthy and things like that. And you make the change for your kids and for yourself because it literally starts with self and saying, hey, there's a problem here. And when you build up that courage to seek that professional help, it starts helping you see the patterns that you had inside yourself and it translates to a better relationship with your kids. Now, how did your understanding of trauma and your nervous system start to change the way you saw yourself through the process?
It changed everything for me because I stopped seeing myself as this broken human being that was unlovable and never going to be enough, that I was too sensitive or too talkative, too over anxious, always too much, as they say. And I started understanding that my body and my nervous system had adapted to be able to survive. And That gave me a lot more compassion for myself, and it helped me separate who I was truly from the coping mechanisms and the tools that I had developed. And giving myself that grace that this nervous system and was developed because of the trauma. So it had gone on for decades. And that meant it wasn't going to happen overnight, that I woke up one day and all of a sudden I'm healed and I have no more trauma within me. So by learning to be able to give myself that grace and self forgiveness, that was one of the hardest things that I managed to get myself through. And I won't lie, like healing is not linear. So there are days where I have setbacks and I don't give myself as much grace, but learning the self forgiveness and the grace that it's going to take time for your nervous system to get out of fight or flight. It's okay to be lazy or take a day to yourself where you just want to sleep because that's what your nervous system needs and it's going to be okay.
I too went through that of feeling like I was too much. And that's a lot of what society is currently going through. A lot of people feel like they're just too much or nobody cares or I just got to figure out a way to get through this. So they end up in survival mode and don't even realize they're in survival mode until something goes wrong with their health or they just are literally forced to sit down. So I'm telling y'all, like, literally don't ever feel like you're too much because that in that moment of you feeling like you're too much is the moment where you can end up on a downward spiral and start literally rejecting yourself to fit in and become a people pleaser and overwhelming yourself and your nervous system. So I again like Sherri, you hitting on all the great points today because a lot of people are battling this right now.
I resonate with that. Yes. Sometimes when we're too much, we're just too much for not the right people.
And I love how you said that as well, because not everybody is meant to be in your circle. So a lot of some people come for a season and they're there for a reason. And you just have to go through your healing process to understand why that person was there. And a lot of times it was because you were rejecting yourself in that moment. So was there a specific moment or an experience or a realization even that sparked the shift from fixing yourself to understanding yourself?
Oh, the biggest shift was probably when I stopped asking myself, what's wrong with me? Am I a problem? Like, what is this? And then I started asking myself, what happened to me? And so then it wasn't me being the problem and what's wrong with me. It's like, what happened in my life, in my early childhood, that is causing me to be this way? I realized healing wasn't becoming someone new. It was learning how I became or how do I become the version of myself and how can I rewire all those old patterns in me to reconnect to that person that I was put on this earth to be underneath all my survival mode and my survival pattern. Because ultimately, yes, we do change as we evolve and age and everything like that. But we're also born these loving creatures in life with a purpose. And our life experiences and our trauma start to mold us, shape us, close us off. And so when I started looking inwards and was like, what happened? I was able to start trying to see who I was and figure out what did happen. Where did I close off my heart? Where did I close off my sensitivity? And by doing that, it started to open me up to authentically who I am and unapologetically be me.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And you did say that word rewiring. So let's talk about the process of it.
Oh, in the beginning, it was messy. It was probably a lot of tears, a lot of anger, a lot of blame on myself. It was not easy. It was a very hard process because you have to face your demons. You have to face what shaped you, what brought you to where you are. But not just that, you had to face all the mistakes that you made because you continued to put this ball around you and you became this spiky nuclei and pushed everybody away kept everybody at arm's length, hurt people before they could hurt you. And as the common saying goes, hurt people hurt people. And so in the beginning, it was facing a lot of that and a lot of back and forth. I would make 50 steps forward, but I would make 4,000 steps backwards when I would have a slip. And then it would be like, okay, I guess I'll just drink more today. Okay, I guess I'll just go sleep with someone. And then it was like that cycle. And then it was like, no, okay, Sherri, you got this. You realized you had a slip. I recognized what it was that made me feel that way, and then learning how to sit with those emotions because as people pleasers, we're taught our emotions don't matter. They are not validated. And so all of those tiny little emotions that we have get bottled up in a little box and we don't deal with them. And so through the healing, it's learning to recognize those emotions kind of bubbling inside of you, wanting to come out and then sit with them and realize those are healthy and those are okay. And it's okay to cry. It's not shameful. It's not embarrassing. It's soul relieving, actually. And it looked like learning not to react, to slow down, become more self aware within yourself when those emotions are coming up, or what's causing you to react like that because something's causing you to react like that. And it's recognizing what that is and whether that is a phrase you heard as a child or as a teenager or from a spouse. If you've experienced a toxic or abusive relationship, then all those become messaging and we take those on as ourselves and we start that negative self talk. And it's learning that our nervous system needs regulation and creating those healthier boundaries. No is a full sentence that people pleasers forget. We often over explain. We often make excuses or tell them exactly why with this big explanation instead of just saying no. And then learning how that feels within ourselves. And I don't know, I found when I started setting those boundaries, it became very uncomfortable. And it meant I had to face things or I had to avoid them. And if I was avoiding them, what good was I doing for myself or anyone else? And by setting the boundaries, by sitting with myself and sitting in silence, because silence was crazy for me. I needed chaos, I needed noise. And by allowing myself to sit in that silence, it forced myself to listen to my intuition, listen to what my mind is telling me, listen to what my body is telling me. And eventually, over time, it started to create peace within me. And now, when there's arguing or any of that going on, it's chaos for me and it instantly strikes my nervous system. But because I'm now aware of that and aware of how my insides basically start to feel when a situation comes up at work or with my son or when any type of relationship, I know now that I can take that moment and pause and be like, let me think about that and I'll get back to you without that constant reacting. And through all of it and that rewiring, and by doing that, it's building the new pathways. It's creating new patterns that our system is absolutely foreign to have because most people want that chaos. So the rewiring is very long, but it's worth it. And I can say I love myself probably more through the healing journey and learned so much about myself through that rewiring that it's one of the biggest, proudest investments is making myself important and relearning because with rewiring, you're also teaching yourself how to love yourself again. And that's often something we don't do. We give love to everybody else, but we don't give love to ourselves. We think that we need to get love from somebody else. And through my rewiring process, I've been able to break a lot of those old patterns, recognize a lot of those old patterns, and develop a new, healthier way to kind of navigate my brain around those healthier patterns. And the way I look at myself in the mirror now, the way I feel within myself, and even comments that you get from other people, like where they will say, "Wow, you look like you're happier. Or you look like you got a beat in your step now. Like, what are you doing differently?" And it kind of just makes you realize, yeah, it is worth the journey. It is worth the mess. It is worth all that chaos because in the end, you're going to feel comfortable and peace.
She brought up some great points because when you do start the healing journey, it does start off as chaos. And I was a crybaby growing up and just constantly heard people say, "Stop crying. You got to get tougher. You need a backbone." And so when I got older, I stopped crying and I started thinking that chaos was normal. And if I did not have chaos, I felt like something was wrong in that moment. And so I would start to overthink and go and find the chaos, even in some cases. And so that's a great aspect to bring up because healing is not linear. It's not the same for everybody and it does not look the same for everybody. But you have to learn how to face those shadows, which is another thing that people hate to face, which is those old patterns and yourself in the moment in those decisions and learn to start to forgive yourself, which as you said is very hard to do. And I can testify that it's hard to do, y'all, because you look back and you go, I was that stupid. And you start putting in that negative talk is instead of boundaries, you build walls because you're trying to protect yourself from that old person and making those same mistakes. And sure enough, those walls end up turning into even more stress that you're putting on yourself. Everything in life has a reason, it has a purpose to it. You go through it for a reason, learn the lessons, and eventually you start to find peace with it. And that is just my own personal journey. And I'm happy that you brought that up, Sherri, because that is true. You literally do start to make peace with the things that you went through in the past, and your body, it starts to feel a lot more free. And you start to develop, like how me and Sherri have right now, a light to yourself. Now, again, we've been talking about how feeling safe in your own body can be powerful. What were some of the first signs that safety was becoming real for you?
I would say one of the biggest signs was that I stopped reacting immediately from panic or fear, and I could actually pause before responding. I also stopped feeling the need to constantly defend myself or explain myself in every situation. And I started self respect, which allowed me to start trusting myself again. And then I was like, oh, that's what safety feels like. Because then you can look inward and have that intuition. And as long as you trust yourself, you can really hear your intuition, which causes you to have that safety. Because if you're not trusting yourself, how can you feel safe within yourself?
And how did you begin to move from that reacting to responding? And what did that shift change in your relationship or in your daily life?
I would say that I probably started to learn how to regulate my emotions and learn what was triggering me and how I was feeling. Because sometimes it's a simple word that can trigger you to cause you to react. If somebody says, "Oh, you should go to the grocery store," well, that puts an expectation on you instead of, "Could you please go to the grocery store?" There's a difference. And some people don't even realize it's little tiny micro words that are causing you to have these massive explosion episodes and react completely out of emotion instead of logic. So by doing that, it was becoming aware of my triggers and I started to ask myself what I was actually feeling inside instead of just reacting automatically and being like flying off the handle, thinking this is ridiculous. And it was listening to take that time because a lot of people will listen to respond instead of listening to listen. So as long as we listen to respond, it allows us to shut down that front of our brain, kind of like the alligator brain that just wants to react to everything. And listening to listen and then react and react from logic versus the emotion. And that shift changed my relationships tremendously because I communicated more clearly with everybody. I didn't just shoot off at the mouth, as some would say. And I had the healthier boundaries, and it caused more peace internally, which over time, it just became second nature to start to listen, not listening to respond. And taking that pause for a moment, especially if somebody said something that's triggering to you, sit with that feeling for a second and then respond. And I'm not going to say that this is going to be easy every single day because it's not. We always have good days and bad days. We will have setbacks. It doesn't mean we're a failure. It doesn't mean that we have reverted back to who we were 1 year ago or 6 months ago or 5 years ago. It just means like, okay, yeah, that came up. Why am I feeling that way? And just rebalancing yourself again, giving yourself a recheck in, and it just holds yourself accountable to your own actions because in the end, we can only control ourselves. We can't control everything around us as much as we like to. We just can't.
As we've been talking about rebuilding trust with yourself, because that is another thing on the healing journey. You relearn how to trust yourself after you've made so many mistakes and built up these walls. So let's talk about that for a second. What did that journey look like for you, and what helped you stay committed to it?
I would say that rebuilding trust within myself was or looked like respecting myself and setting boundaries, and set the boundaries in concrete. Don't set them in sand where the water is going to wash them away because that's not going to do any good for you. I did that often thinking, oh, yeah, I'm respecting myself. I set a boundary. But if somebody just pokes just a little bit, you're going to wash that boundary away. So I made sure to start setting those boundaries in concrete, not sand. And I started to quit ignoring my own needs. And I started showing up for myself, showing compassion for myself, continuing to have self forgiveness. And I also learned that, again, there's going to be setbacks. Be gentle on yourself when there's those setbacks. They're normal, they're okay to have. Again, it doesn't mean you're failing. And with self-respect, that could be anything. That could be start going to the gym, start apologizing to yourself, start with small things like look in the mirror today, give yourself a high five, or tell yourself you look good, you're going to have a great day. I started waking up and telling myself three positive things or three things that I'm grateful as soon as my alarm went off before I even got out of bed. It just started to set the tone. And by having self-respect, it meant no more sleeping with people outside of relationships. It meant no more drinking. It meant showing up for myself, going to the gym, eating healthier, being consistent, not wallowing in self-pity because I had a bad day, or ruminating, because rumination is a huge thing with overthinking. And when we get in that ruminating cycle, we can be there for days. And that is not good for anybody. And I started asking myself, can I control it? If the answer is no, let it go. You can't control it. If the answer is yes, can I fix it right now? No. Okay. Let's put it on the back burner. We'll figure it out later. And if I can fix it right now, what can I do to fix it so that I can have peace? And with self respect, if you can't respect yourself, you can't ask anybody else to respect you. If you can't love yourself, no one else is going to love you. And if they do, it's not going to be the love that you're putting out there, because what you're putting out is what you're going to get back. So if you are a negative person, you're self doubting, you're self hating, you're disrespectful to yourself, that's what's coming back to you. And I started noticing as I started having self love, self trust, self forgiveness, my circle started to change. And when your circle starts to change, that can throw your inside off a little bit and be like, "Who? What did I do? Why am I losing friends?" And it can cause you to spiral. But if you just ask God or the universe, whoever you subscribe to, give me what's aligned for me and remove what's not aligned for me. And as you change and as you grow, you will find that your circle will change. Toxic is toxic. That doesn't mean just because they're your family that they get a free pass to you and your mental health. Everybody, like a lot of people will say, oh, the trash will take itself out. When people tell me that, I'm like, I don't believe that. I believe that's what's aligned for you will stay, and what's not aligned for you will find a way out. Because I believe that everybody is good for somebody, Not everybody is good for you. And we have to remember that in our healing journey, we're going to lose people. That's going to be sad. That's going to be upsetting. It's going to be hurtful. And it's not because you suddenly dislike them or they suddenly dislike you. It's just that they're not healthy for you anymore. And that's okay. And it allowed new people to come into my world and new friends to come into my world and chosen family. And by allowing that in, it's like the world is your oyster. And the people that align with you bring you more love and more joy and remind you this is who you truly are. This is what living authentically and unapologetically you truly looks like. And it's amazing.
Amen, amen, and amen again. Because if you're willing to do the work, y'all, it can really lead you down to a path of where you end up start finding your people. You start having a new purpose. And as I mentioned at the beginning of today's episode, the unsung heroes of the mental health field, which I have always said are peer support specialists. Now let's talk about that now because you are a lived experience peer support coach right now. So how do you help others identify and break the patterns they're stuck in?
I do it through just genuine conversation. I don't believe in sitting down and being like, "So, what brought you here today? Why are you upset?" Or "Tell me your life story." Because honestly, all you're doing is re traumatizing yourself when you continue to do it. And it becomes clinical. And I often tell people, I'm not a therapist. I am a lived experience coach. So everything I help with, everything I do is all through my own trauma, abuse, life's chaos, everything that I've experienced. So I prefer to have just a general conversations. What is something you might want to work on today? Or what's a pattern you notice that's kind of irritating you? And by listening to you talk, I will start to then ask you the deeper questions. And whether that is, you might not like physical touch, or you might not like somebody consistently holding your hand or something. What happened to you? Like, did you have family members that were making you feel that that was inappropriate when you were little? Or just different things like that. Why does the word worry bother you? And you might not even realize that you're reacting to those. So by asking those deeper questions is causing you to dig deeper into your own past. And then you might be like, "Oh, that makes sense. I didn't think about that." So then it's like, okay, now we've recognized this pattern within you and we've recognized where it comes from. So, what can we work on to start changing that? Is it a pattern that you even want to change? Is it something that even affects you? Or is it something that just comes up once in a blue moon? Or is it something that's tying into something else? Is it causing you anxiety? Is it causing your nervous system to be a little bit out of whack? And recognize how those things are also causing behaviors within yourself. And I don't do it in a way that's going to shame you because we all have a story. And if somebody feels shameful, why would they ever get help? So I want people to know that I'm there to validate them. What they're feeling is real and it's real to them and it's something that they've experienced. And a lot of people, they want validation. They want to know they're not alone and that these are tools they've developed for survival, but they don't have to live in that. So I try to help them create that safe space where they are feeling understood while also building self-awareness and self-awareness within themselves, helping them to set more boundaries, create more emotional safety within themselves, and start to have that self-trust, self-respect, and self-love. And it's all small steps. So I'll give them, depending, everybody's unique. So depending on the situation, between sessions, I might just give them one goal to work on, or I'll give them up to three. I try not to ever give more than three goals between sessions. And if it's three goals, it's going to be three goals that kind of play off on each other. So it builds. And then we'll do a check-in, see how they handled those goals. Did it cause too much anxiety between sessions? Is this something they feel like, oh, I need to dial it back a little bit, or like feeling great at this and now I want to work on something else. And it's like, okay, perfect. Because a lot of times we don't set goals for ourselves, we don't set boundaries for ourselves, and we also don't know how to follow through with those goals. So it'll be tiny little goals. Like self love is something that they're really struggling with. That was something I really struggled with in the start of my healing journey. I would often speak to myself, like I'd call myself stupid or an idiot or dumb or something. But our subconscious doesn't know the difference between a joke and reality. So when we are telling ourselves, you're dumb, or you look in the mirror today and you're like, oh, my hair looks so dumb today. This is stupid. Our brain hears we're dumb, we're stupid. And it doesn't matter if we say, oh, I'm just joking. Like, you look great today. So I will start with a small goal, like every morning, get up and tell yourself, like, you're smart, you're beautiful, you're going to have an amazing day today. Or write it on the mirror if you want, in the bathroom mirror, so that you are always seeing it every day. You are strong, you are beautiful. Like if it's something that you struggle with, and start really small. And when you start building the self love, you'll be able to set the boundaries easier. You'll be able to set the self trust easier because you start that positive self talk within yourself. Because a lot of us, I have found, that's where the biggest struggle is. How do we talk kind to ourselves? And if we're not talking kind to ourselves, we can't talk kind to somebody else. So I'll start with that. And I find that when they can recognize it, it's kind of like the light bulb goes off. And then they're like, how did I not recognize this? How did I know this? Or like, I've been in therapy for years. Why didn't they recognize it? And it's like, because therapists don't always focus on that. And most therapists are about talking about your problems and how do you get over your problem. And I have been to counselors, I've been to social workers, I've been to psychologists and psychiatrists. And I did finally find one really good psychotherapist that didn't make me explain anything. And that is where the most of my healing journey came. And then I started doing research and was like, hey, I think there's a need for peer support coaching in this. And kind of mixing it between the peer support specialist and the life coach and bringing them together to be able to have that rewiring so that people can get a mix of both. So if somebody isn't quite ready to do the work, I'm very open and I will tell them at the beginning of a session, if you just need an ear because you need to vent and feel validated, please let me know that at the start of the session because that's how I will show up for you. And if eventually you want the coaching, let me know. I am more than willing to then add on the coaching. Either way, it's your journey and what you're ready to experience. And some people will say, well, I don't want a therapist. I want somebody that knows what I'm going through. They don't know what I'm going through. That's the benefit of the peer support specialists is we only have life experience. I've taken a peer support worker course and certificate. I've taken life coaching certificates, but everything I speak from is my own personal experience. I've had loss, whether that's partnerships or the loss of a child. I've gone through sexual assault. I grew up in a home with violence and addiction and men coming and going and believing that if you were being beaten or getting a firearm pulled on you or something, it was because you deserved it. You weren't good enough. And sometimes in that healing journey, you do need a therapist or you do need a counselor or you do need a social worker or a psychiatrist. There is a place for everyone. And I will tell people if I notice they're really struggling, hey, I might not be the first step for you. You might need to go a little deeper into your healing journey because sometimes it is just a matter of wanting to talk and figuring it out at a deeper level and then coming back and being like, okay, now I'm ready for the work. Now I'm ready for the lived experience coach that can actually show me what it looks like to go through the chaos and start rewiring. And I think everyone has their specialty and everyone has their position where it can be. So to kind of sum it up, for me, it's like I help them feel validated, be seen, create that safe space for them, and then recognize, where does this come from? And what goal do you want at the end of the day on who you want to be?
And this is why I say that coaches and peer support coaches, especially, are the unsung heroes of the mental health field because a lot of times that's literally what people need starting off their healing journey, that validation and somebody understanding, hey, I've been through this and I don't understand why I've been through this. So it's just like when you meet a peer support coach or a life coach, they are there to help you because they've been through it themselves and they can validate, hey, I've been through that too. So you are not alone. And that's literally how you break stigmas. And a lot of people look at therapists as people that are there to validate things that you've been through. But honestly, therapists are there to listen to what you've been through and then give you those tips and tools to help you grow. And I absolutely love the fact that you said there's space for everybody, y'all. Like there's a big whole controversy going on right now on who belongs where, but at the end of the day, everybody has the same goal, which is to help people become their better selves. So learn to give a lot more grace no matter what the title is in this mental health field because everybody has a space, everybody has a purpose, and it's all about really helping people find the right source for them in that moment because that is important as well. Because I know a lot of people like myself started off in therapy and sure enough, I may have needed a psychiatrist. And it takes going to therapy for them to tell you you need a psychiatrist, but you got to first step out there and be willing to say, hey, this is my story. Hey, this is what I'm going through. And sometimes a therapist might tell you you need a peer support coach or a life coach versus their services at the time. So it's literally everybody has a space, everybody has a purpose, and everybody has a reason, y'all. So please stop arguing on the internet on who belongs where because we all belong in the space, y'all. We really do. Now, let's talk about misconceptions because, of course, everything, what no matter what industry you're in, no matter what title you hold in mental health, there are a lot of misconceptions out there. What are some of the common misconceptions people have about healing, especially when it comes to trauma and self compassion?
I would say one of the biggest misconceptions about healing is that it's linear or that once you're healed, you'll never get a trigger again. You're just healed. And that another is that self compassion means that you're avoiding accountability or when in reality, it's creating more awareness and more growth. Healing is always an ongoing journey. It's layered, it's messy, it is not linear, and that being high functioning doesn't always mean someone is okay. If you see someone being high functioning, there's a good chance that they're really messy on the inside.
She just called a lot of people out on that high functioning because people do. We do build those mentalities of we got to do this, we got to get that done. And it comes across to society as, oh, this person is successful. Nothing bothers them. They've clearly gone through their healing journey. When on the inside, they're in pure chaos. They're going home confined in drugs, confined in alcohol and other things that are very dangerous to their system and then they're coming right back to work the next day and just doing it all over again. So that real deal is a misconception in the mental health field as well as you see a person talking about their healing journey and next thing you're trying to do the same thing and it doesn't work out for you. And I'm telling you, healing isn't linear, y'all. It's not a one size fits all. It's not one person's healing journey is better than the other person's healing journey. No, it literally is a assessment of self. And that's how we literally get to healing. So, Sherri, those are some of the misconceptions. Just even in peer support, it's the same thing in counseling, it's the same thing in psychiatry, it's the same thing pretty much everywhere across the board. Honestly and truly, you have to ignore literally everything that you're seeing on social media right now. You have to sometimes even ignore what your community is speaking on because it will literally have you out here thinking that, oh, I got to go do that tomorrow. And you end up doing it. And 6 months from now, you feel worse than what you already were in. So please do that assessment of your own self, which I like to call check in with yourself. Because if you check in with yourself, it'll tell you exactly what you need.
Yes, that's exactly. That check-in is huge.
Now, sadly, we've come to the end of today's episode, and I give you a couple of seconds to think about this. How do you hope your story inspire others?
I hope that my story will remind people that they are not broken, that they aren't their stories, and they can change their pattern. And I want people to know that healing is a journey and it is possible as long as they put in the work. It's not linear, it's messy, it's chaos, but it is so worth it that we are our biggest investment in life. And if my story even helps one person feel understood or validated or gives them hope, then it was worth sharing. And then I would like to add if anybody wants to dive deeper into their own healing journey or they're interested in a little bit more of my story and kind of how I went through the healing process, I did just write my first mini memoir called This Is Me, and it's available for purchase on Amazon. So it in there kind of tells you a little bit about how I grew up, the struggles I had as a motherhood, and then how I became to becoming a peer support coach and creating Life Rewired.
And to extend on being an author as well as that, please let everybody know how they can sign up for your services as well.
They can message me through email at life.rewired.sherry@gmail.com. And I can also be found on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, or threads at Life Rewired Sherry.
And I will be making sure to leave all of that information down in the description box below. Any last words before we leave today's conversation?
Thank you so much for this opportunity and this time. And I hope that my story will resonate with someone.
Thanks again to peer support coach and author and founder of Life Rewired, Miss Sherri Grieve, for coming on and sharing her personal journey with us. And you be sure to subscribe if today's message resonated with you. Also, leave some comments down in the comment section on which part resonated the most. Until we meet again, keep your healing intentional, your boundaries solid, and your peace protected.